The Lost Empire of Netheril. Last year's Rime of the Ice Maiden brought this empire back into the Forgotten Realms in a very real way, as adventurers discovered an ancient flying city beneath the Red Glacier. It was a great plot device and a throwback to the Arctic sci-fi horror movie The Thing from Another World, but it begged the question, what was the Netheril Empire? Who were these archmages who could raise such incredible cities? And what caused them to come crashing to the ground? I'm Simon Tells Tales, and in this 5-part series I'm going to be diving into TSR's 1996 campaign setting, Netheril Empire of Magic, by Slade with Jim Butler. I'm going to be taking you through the rise of the Netheril Empire, its height, and its tragic fall, before getting into the mechanics of the campaign setting, how what works, what doesn't, how much homebrewing is required to bring it up into 5e, and then finally sharing some story hooks for anyone who wants to set their own campaign in this world. In this first video though, I'll be retelling the story of the birth of the Netheril Empire. So where do we begin? Well, let's start high above the masts of ships and crow's nests cluttered around the docks of Neverwinter, before we fly east, travelling over farm sites and the campsites of merchant caravans where bodyguards watch the roads and traders swap tales of the sights they've seen. Let us curve around the tufts of cloud that cling to the lost peaks, pushing up from the thick dark green canopy of high forest, and then we'll skim the Delimber River, where a ranger cleans his blade in the clear waters, having flushed out a den of goblins who've been preying on travellers. We will stay high in the sky as we pass over the black depths of the dark moor, lest we attract the attention of a purple worm, and as the air turns heavy and dry and the spires of Arim appear on the horizon, we will swoop low and low again, circling down to the twisting, shifting sands of the desert that some know as an Aurak and others know as Netheril. Here, amongst the dunes, sound itself seems to be swallowed up by the heat. But this land wasn't always a desert. There was an empire here, once. Now, official releases of 5th edition Forgotten Realms campaigns take place around 1489 Dale Reckoning. But for this story, we're going to go way back. Netheril's history actually begins in negative 3859 Dale Reckoning. That's about 5,350 years before current official adventures. Let's put that in context. The time difference we're talking about here is a difference between Elon Musk putting rockets into space and the first cities developing in southern Mesopotamia. 5,300 years ago is the date of the earliest Egyptian hieroglyphics. So when TSR described Netheril as ancient, they mean it. So let's travel back in time. Let the heat-scorched winds pull grains of sand into the air, wrapping them around themselves in a swirling vortex of yellow-brown dust that spreads and grows, extending over the dunes, pulling at your clothes as it races towards you, engulfing you in its wind as it tears at the air, at your skin, and the very plains of existence, before finally passing over you. Not into the eye of a storm, but a vast, dark blue body of water that sweeps over the area where only moments ago there was desert. Transported back in time, you see green rolling hills where sand dunes used to be, and tall crops of trees that whisper with the rustling of leaves. This is the narrow sea. And if you followed it west, it would take you along winding waterways, right to the edge of the Sword Coast. But we are heading east, along the shores of the narrow sea and the white heads of the cresting waves, past the chain of rocks that form the channel lock, and towards its eastern edge and the collection of 7 sleepy villages that sit by its shores, their fishing boats breaking and cresting as they set out on the waves. Notice the wooden palisades by the edges of these villages, the wary guards who stand on watch, and the fires from the forges that are making swords, not fishermen's spears. These 7 villages have faced extinction at the hands of orc attacks time and time again, and the orcs have almost succeeded. But now, desperate to survive, the villages have banded together out of mutual interest to form the fledgling nation of Seventon, led by the shaman king, Nether. You can see him there, in the town of Morven Fenwick, overseeing the production of rough and rudimentary blades with which he hopes to fend off future orc attacks. See, in the lights of the forges, even now he is beginning to be seduced by the idea of empire, and see in the eyes of his followers the telltale signs of treachery and betrayal. Nether will not stay a part of this history for long, but he will be here for long enough to rename his kingdom as Netheril. So let us allow the waves to crash against the shores, butting up against the boats and the wooden jetties and the fishermen's nets, before we draw back and see 14 years after the founding of the Netheril Empire, the Iolani Elves approaching Seventon from across the grassy plains. This is the first time the two races have met, and cries and shouts of fear and excitement spread through the villages. Up until now, it was thought that elves were imaginary, but now the Netherese are about to discover that they are very real. And as the grass shifts across the plains, see how trade routes open up between Seventon and the realm of the Elves, and dried smoked fish travels across roads in long caravans in the direction of the Elves, while in the village halls of Seventon, Elves sit with groups of Netherese, teaching them how to tap into the magics of the weave, which at that time was a magical resource of endless possibility, free of the constraints that modern-day arcane users face. Move from village hall to village hall, speeding up with each movement as you see, over the years, more and more Netherese villagers learning the magic of the Elves, until the Netherese are teaching themselves, and every crafter and trade worker in this band of 7 villages is making use of spells in their everyday. See how at the age of 13, every child in this fledgling empire is taught magic, and see, when the elven delegates come to visit, the half-concealed looks of concern as they watch the increasing cycle of magical dependence and experimentation that is now spreading through the fishing towns on the edge of the narrow sea. Follow those elves as they return to their forested homes among the shadows and the leaves and the bark, and then let us go further. Let's go another 326 years after the founding of Netheril and skirt along the tree line to a stretch of rocky moorland to the west of the Faerun's forest. See here how a young Netherese, we will not know their name, is stumbling among the briar and the gorse until something catches their eye, a strange configuration of rocks amongst the bluffs and the peaks in this undulating place. The Netherese gets closer, and as they do, they discover not a strange outcrop, but an ancient ruin. This young Netherese will trail their hands over the remains of the furniture and the strange configuration of the walls. It's almost as if whoever used to live here used both the floor and the walls, and the furniture seems to have been set up for creatures with 4 legs. The young Netherese will search deeper and deeper until finally discovering an ancient stone cask and breaking it open. Inside, they will discover 100 golden scrolls that catch and shift in the light. Watch how this young Netherese examines each of the scrolls, laying them out on the ground, and discovering that the scrolls are 2 sets of 50, one old and tarnished, the other newer. Lean in close to the scrolls and see the runes on them that move and shift, so that a single scroll contains more information than the shape of it should ever allow. Already the eyes of this young Netheries are going wide as they start to realise the significance of the find. These scrolls will go on to be known as the Nether Scrolls, and the lore that is contained within them will teach the Netheries everything from spellcasting, to the enchantment of magical items, to the construction of beings such as golems, detailed planar mechanics that will allow them to traverse realm space, and the creation of artifacts from scratch. This single find will catapult the Netheril Empire towards a huge expansion across the grassy plains that surround the narrow sea, and will give them such knowledge that they will cease to recognise the authority of the gods and anticipate the day when they too will have access to celestial power. I'm Simon Tells Tales, and I hope you enjoyed this retelling of the birth of the Netheril Empire, as first told in TSR's 1996 publication, Netheril Empire of Magic by Slade with Jim Butler. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the button below and subscribe for more videos exploring some of the classic Forgotten Realms D&D settings. If you've got a favourite out there that you'd love me to cover as well, let me know in the comments below. Until then, I bid you farewell, and hopefully we'll see you again next time when we explore Netheril at the height of its power.